Hello and welcome to Back of the Nest. It's the match report, 0-0 Palace versus Chelsea, and with me today, Patrick O'Connor.
Hello, Hambo. How are you?
Warm, very warm.
Yeah, it's hot here too. Yeah, it's hot here today.
I've got like an additional microclimate going on in this office because of it's a small room and there's electrical equipment in here and all the windows are shut. So I'm really ramping up the heat myself. So good times. I'll get redder and sweatier as the show goes on. So look forward to that. But yeah, first of all, we sort of get some sort of general instant reactions before we get into what is a very obvious talking point, right? And for my part, I'm not unhappy with a point today. I think we deserved it, and I think we worked really hard. I think there were times during the course of the game where I think we were lacking a little bit in sort of invention.
Yeah.
And it's, fairly typical the start of the season, really, which is, not everybody's 100% there. I think both teams at the end of the game were sort of lying down like it was the last game of the season, because I think it's just a shock to the system when you play to that high level, again, in heat as well, because it's still a hot day. So I think there was a lot going on in that game, but we did really well. We created probably the best chances and scored what appeared to be a legitimate goal, and really defensively handled what Chelsea had pretty well. And Chelsea have got a real, significant depth of good players, some, real talent. They've added well over the course of the summer, and they're different types of threat all over the pitch, really. And the way the team remained compact and still dangerous, again, really impressive, as you expect with Glasner. And everybody knew their job, everybody knew how to hurt Chelsea and how to keep them under control, and we didn't have to rely on wonder saves or anything like that. There was probably one or two glaring misses from Chelsea, but you could argue we had a couple of good opportunities as well where the wrong decision was taken. So I think a good result for us, and I don't think Chelsea could argue that we were deserving of at least a point. How did you see it?
No, definitely the same. I would say that I've said it in the past. I think our starting 11 is as good as anyone's, and defensively very solid today. We gave up one shot the first half, two late in the second half. I think one was definitely the lap one. I just thought all over the pitch we were pretty good. Again, the opportunities going forward, we could have made a better pass, a better decision at some points. But the key comes back to that. We'll get into at some point. Is the free kick, because like Brentford, if that goes in, it's a different game for us. But I'm not unhappy with the point. With all the noise around Eze and Gehi yesterday, really upset my Saturday. Yesterday, just so much noise going on, and is he playing? He's not going to play. The fact that credit to Eze for not only playing pretty well, and just everything that's going around him. And again, to me it was a really good free kick that he quote unquote scored. But I'm not happy with the point, because again, I really feared a battering based on the fact, again, so much going on behind us. But again, that's me not giving credit to Glasner. Last, 28 games, 4 or 5 losses, solid everywhere around the pitch, creating chances, doing really well. So no, a point away, first game, Stamford Bridge, I'll take it.
Yeah, and when you think about the attacking talent that they have, to restrict them in that way, it was very pleasing. And they're not bad players. They really aren't. And I think the defensive line in general did an incredible job. And I suppose when you're saying we could have made different choices, we could have done different things, like I said as well. And you sort of start thinking, well, that's where we are really. You look at Ty, probably one of our best players on the day in terms of just superb defensively, all action display up and down the pitch, never tired. Dealt with different types of threat all game. Was really, obviously Esteval William comes off the bench, and they couldn't wait to highlight how great he is, could they? All he was just running down blind alleys, but great. He put one cross in. So, but we'll say he's the best player in the world already, shall we? But it's it was really frustrating when you see that. But but at the same time, good player, very quick, very direct, and Ty had to adjust to that and did so really well. But I'm stuck on the one moment of him being free on the left-hand side, no pressure at all to put a cross in, and then it just ballooning it behind. Remember when I used to say Joel Ward had a 50p foot or something like that?
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was just and you just get frustrated with those moments where you just think that's different. Sometimes he puts a ball in there. I think there was 2 players in the box. Chelsea scrambling to get back. It could have been different, and I get stuck on those little moments. But I really want to try and focus on the positives there. And we had funnily enough, in possession we were really well balanced. I think there was no whether we were going down the middle or either side. You couldn't really predict that about us. We were happy to break through the middle. We were happy to break on the right, happy to break on the left, and that kept Chelsea on their toes as well. So I think that level of balance was really good. I just feel like, Munoz is such a different prospect on the right. He comes out one of our furthest forward players every game. You think you've got. I think this game, I think he was in advance of Mateta in terms of average positions on the pitch. So you just think that's something that you get from him that you don't get the other side. And I'm not necessarily saying it's a problem, but it does impact on how the team has to kind of rotate around that and cover spaces. So there's things to work on for sure, but you can't be upset at that performance. And I do feel like more than ever when you look at the bench, we made 2 subs, didn't we, in the game? And I wasn't sitting there thinking, "Oh, get Edward on."
Yeah.
Or give Jez a chance running down on the right. Good player, but is he going to impact that game? Probably not. Not at the time. Not in the situations we had. If we'd had an injury maybe to a player in the 65th, 70th minute, he might have been able to come on and have an impact. But when you're kind of thinking, do we chase this or do we take the point? Not the player to come on. So there was no one really that I felt we could have brought on to change the game in a major way. And I think that tells a story, really, and that's why we do need players back from injury, but we do need a couple more signings.
Yeah, without a doubt, if Parrish, and he was there because they showed him on TV at least twice, if he sees that performance again, he has to say, okay, if I have to sell Eze, I've got to bring in 2, 3 more players. Because like you said, the bench wasn't awful, but you're right. You look at it, you're saying to yourself, Lerma can come on, no problem. Deveni, maybe Edward if Mateta's blowing, but there isn't a lot of choice there. But if you give this manager the tools, you see what he can do. So going to the match, I thought Wharton was excellent today. He made some absolutely brilliant passes going forward. But Hughes looked a little bit tired, but he worked hard. He got his usual yellow card, but I thought he worked really hard. Thank goodness we had Lerma to come in for him because it was around 65 was when I thought, you know what, Hughes got to come off that pitch because he's not going to be able to last. So that was great to have Lerma as an option. But you're right, besides him, there's really no one else to come on. I thought Mateta's hold-up play was absolutely fantastic today, as always. Really helped get us up the pitch when we weren't really had the opportunity. And in the chat saying Eze, decision maker, wasn't great today. He had a couple of times, but he made one really strange decision to, instead of going forward, to switch the play and led to a Chelsea counterattack down the left, which is really weird. I thought he played okay today, but decision making at certain points was poor. Saw was very quiet for him, but I just didn't get the ball enough. But I think overall, as a team performance, it was very good. From the back, Hendo made the saves he had to make. They had a lot of corner kicks, and we didn't really look that bothered. They tried the same thing every time, near post. They must have seen something there in film, but it wasn't there because Lacroix, Richards, Gahey, brilliant. You're right about Mitchell. I thought Ty was very, very good. Had a tough assignment. What was it? Neto at one point. Is it Neto on that side?
Yep.
Yeah. And then he had Esteval. Again, they're self-proclaimed the next Pele, as they want to say on the comms. Good player, but he's not there yet. But I thought Munoz, going forward was very good defensively against Bino Gaines, very good. Again, the performance overall was very good. Again, just a few things here, little tweaks. But again, credit to Glasner. I'm going to say it again. Glasner with that 11 that he puts out there. We don't want the ball, but when we get the ball, we're going to counter you. We're going to create chances. We're going to have opportunities. We had better chances in the first half than Chelsea had. I thought really the performance overall was very good. And then Stamford Bridge is not a place we normally get a point from. We did last year, but normally they'll beat us 1-2, 3-0. So for me, to start the season away and get that point in Stamford Bridge, I will take it all day. And I'm very happy with the performance overall.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely, and a couple of things you said there. I mean, Hughes, you talked about a little bit there, and obviously Kamada injured, in the Charity Shield game, and so Community Shield game, and didn't get back fully fit. And we'll see when he gets back in. But yeah, I was quite happy to see Hughes start. But you're right. I think he did so much work off the ball. That
A
I'm looking
lot,
at it now, and he only had 22 touches in the 70
right?
minutes he was on. So that's hard for him. If we're dominating possession, or at least having a fair share of possession, I think he perhaps doesn't tire quite that quickly. But I really enjoyed his yellow card, by the way, because it was just one of those where he's just
It was
like,
perfect,
yeah,
perfectly
he had,
timed.
yeah, he's like, yep, this is it. This is there's no way I can do anything else. And he just, yeah, it's just, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, look, I mean, good performance from him. You're right, Wharton, I think was exceptional game, and a couple of times, you know, you had the commentators talking about his, that pass was a little wayward, and I'm just like, it actually wasn't. To be fair,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
there was a couple of times people didn't really get
Read it. Yeah.
on read him, or get enough kind of energy to get forward. And I suppose that was again one of the things that I would pick out is a couple of times we got crosses across the box, and we just weren't close enough to the 6 yard box. There's a lot of hesitancy in getting in, and again, you can understand it. The game plan wasn't to sort of overload and flood Chelsea and try and score 3 or 4 goals. The game plan was to take advantage of the transition of play and hurt them in areas where they could be hurt. And we got in several times. And I suppose probably one of the big things that we planned to do was take advantage of any set pieces that we got. Say for example, the opportunity to strike a free kick directly at goal and score. So maybe we should talk about that, because I'm sure we did that. Can
Yeah.
I just make a point?
Yeah.
It's not like Palace are constantly getting scuppered by lesser seen rules that don't seem to apply to anybody else, is it? We've
Nah,
never heard of that before,
never heard
so
that before.
it's not like that happens. But we're
Rules
a
are rules,
test
right?
case.
Rules are
What's
rules,
that?
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Rules are
exactly.
rules, right?
Rules
Yeah.
are rules, and everybody. Because I don't know about you, I've been watching football a really long time, and I know you have, and I've seen loads of times. I've seen the referees having to draw vertical lines with the spray for defenders to show where they can't, how close they can get. So I've seen it loads. Don't know about you? No, all jokes aside, never in my life have I ever seen that. I get it. I
Never.
mean, I've seen it now. I didn't know it. Like hands on heart, did not know that rule. Rule 13. I'm sure you're going to take us through Rule 13, Patrick.
I will. So actually, I'll pull it up. It's let me share the screen because this is a rule that has been in effect for a few years, but again, I don't think it's ever been actually applied. So, law 13 free kicks. Let me get to the point that's important. Let me see, where are we here? Oops, sorry. This is annoying.
Let's do this.
Here it is. If when a free kick is taken, an attacking team player is less than 1 meter, 1 yard from a wall formed by 3 or more defending players, an indirect free kick is awarded. So apparently, Gahey was less than 1 meter away or 1 yard away from the wall.
Yeah.
Again, you might have. I'm gonna look at my son actually tweeted out the examples when it's never been done before, but that was the first time I've ever seen it done. I would have had more respect for Darren England had he called a foul, because I do think that Gahey fouled Caicedo by pushing him out the way. But to say that is the rule that he blew and that's why VAR called it back is a nonsense.
Yeah, tough one, really, isn't it? So you said your son found some times where it had been applied. So I'm interested in that because I'd never seen it personally. Well, so I'll say this, right? Like you, I thought it was for a foul initially, but it was one of those where I'm like, okay, but if you're going to give that, like a second before that, Gay's being held and pushed in the other direction. So you can't really give that. It's just one of those things of you give that, you're going to have to give a foul continuously every time there's a set piece because people push each other all the time. But I do think Gay, was very much toeing the line in terms of how hard he shoved to create that space. But yeah, like you, when he brought up the fact that he was within 1 meter of the wall, the first thing I'm doing is looking up, well, is that a rule? And obviously we see it that it is. But I I just, it's not so much the times it's been applied. It's like, let's just have a look at, I don't know, 10 Premier League matches, right? And just pull out all the set pieces, and every time there's a wall of more than 3 or more players, and see how, whether it was applied at any point during that. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying, why is it us? Like, why is it every time somebody digs out a rule, or an element of a rule, and says, actually, we're going to apply this now. It just so happens that it's Crystal Palace that they apply it to. It just feels ridiculous. And I would just say this as well. Like, when you see a goal scored, like, it's a little bit like with the offside rule, when there's a millimeter in it and things like that. When you see a goal scored in football, as a supporter, as a pundit, even as a player, and you look at it and you go, yeah, that feels all right. That goal felt all right. And I would say that about today. There was a little bit of a complaint from Sanchez in goal, but mainly because it went straight through him and he should have saved
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
But everybody else looks at that and thinks, "What? That's a great strike," and tactically well done for creating the space to get that shot on target. But the keeper can see it straight away and it's gone through him. So, but no one's really going, "You've got to disallow that for Rule 13," are they? No one's really saying that. So, again, we talk about it all the time, don't we? Consistency of approach. So throughout the course of this season, we got to see that now, haven't we? We've got to, I'm going to be looking for it every game I watch. I'm going to be looking for, has somebody got within 1 meter of a wall of 3 or more players, and there's an indirect free kick being given? Because if it isn't, you then start to feel like, well, what's the point anymore? And it's just too far. It's too much. I don't know why they brought that in 2019, whenever it was. They've the logic seems to be to stop people tactically disrupting the wall. But
Right. That's it.
do,
Exactly.
do you need to do that? Like, because just give a foul. You
Right.
don't have to create a proximity rule, because then you're just like, well, is he 1 meter or 1.1 meters or 0.9 meters? Is it a meter or a yard? Because it says both. Like, why create such ambiguity when you can just give a foul if somebody shoves somebody in the wall, or standing in the middle of your? I know you used to do that, didn't you? You used to stick a player and you would try and stand in the middle of the
Exactly. To
3-man or
cause
4-man
an
wall.
issue. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's why people linked arms and stuff, and it's just an absolute nonsense.
It really is. And again, the context behind it, obviously happened last year against Brentford, where we were robbed of a goal and then we ended up losing that game, which makes it worse. We didn't lose this game. But again, the whole Eze story, possibly his last match, the free kick, well struck, takes the lead. You see the reaction by the players, bending down, how great and then all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, VAR for what? So again, the rule is so minuscule. And you're right, I'm going to be watching a lot of games. I know they said today there's a new 8-second rule, right? Where the goalie has to get rid of the ball, or there's a corner kick. I'm watching for that one. It was enforced yesterday once. And they were talking about, obviously, corner kicks, when there's a lot of pushing and grabbing. They're going to be enforcing that more. But to enforce this rule today was weird. But again, I've never been one to complain about referees, because I don't think the standard in England is good anyway. But down in England, particularly, he just because of the last name, he's just really bad as a referee. And the funny thing is, if you listen to the match, I'm sure you did. Yeah. Both reporters were saying you're not fit to referee. That's very rare that both reporters will sing that song. It's either the home team, because they're not getting the calls, or the away team. But when both supporters are singing you're not fit to referee a match, then that means that you're having a really poor match. And I just thought that call was very, very strange. Again, contextually, I said to my son, I bet you Cole Palmer gets a free kick and they score. Luckily, by the way, he didn't, because Richard took it to the face. But I was saying to myself, they better call a foul or something on his free kick when he scores. Because if they score and we don't get that goal, I'm going to be fuming. But again, thankfully, it worked out that way. But a strange call.
Do you see the confusion when he sprayed the vertical line?
Yeah, it was
weird.
Just
got like, everyone's like,
what?
Okay. And then it becomes this whole thing. It's just madness. But I have to say as well, when we talk about Darren England, and again, I see it today. I haven't done the research on it, but if I've got this thing in my head that says he's got history with us of odd officiating, and probably
Really?
you could find that with a lot of the games. But just strange decisions, not out and out like, oh my god, you're what bias, like we used to feel with John Moss, for example, was one I always felt was a very, very, should we say, susceptible to big club bias. But but for him, I think it's just odd officiating, and it might just be that he's very, very, very into the specifics of the rules, referee with any common sense. But I think I said it at half time in the chat. It just felt like a very strange match because of the officiating today. There was a real inconsistency as to what got let go and what didn't. There was a couple of really clear fouls as we were kind of breaking down the right a couple of occasions. There was a really clear foul from Reece James. I think it was his second
Yeah.
clear foul where it was
Right.
just
On the
kind of
yellow
like,
card. Yeah.
you're like, okay, that's close. And he got told one more before half time, didn't he? And you're just like, well,
Hey, that
okay,
helps us a lot. Yeah.
thanks for that. Yeah, don't do that again, or I might have to send you off. You're like, well, yeah, okay. But like again, but in isolation, you can look at that and go, it might be a bit of common sense refereeing, but he's completely devoid of common sense in so many other situations. So it was very, very disruptive. And as you say, both teams were really frustrated at how he officiated the game today. And yeah, it's just it's just very strange.
Before we move
Oh,
off it, because I want to move on
mm.
real quick. I was just googling like poor decisions by Dan England, and this came up. Mark Clattenburg, of all people, claimed VAR went against Portugal after Eberechi Eze's goal today. Mark Clattenburg said it was a bad decision. I mean, the irony is just I won't even comment. That's mad. But yeah, anyway, so
Do you know what? That's a can of worms as well, because I hadn't really thought about that aspect of it. Because what's VAR is obviously supposed to look at a sort of set criteria for whether to allow or disallow a goal.
exactly, not fouls,
Does
not laws of the game, right? Exactly.
It's
That's a good
like,
point. Yeah.
is there an offside? Is
Right.
there a foul?
Foul. Ball out of play.
Um,
Right. Ball out of play.
Handball?
Handball.
Yeah, ball gone out of play. Is VAR supposed to look at every single rule in the FA handbook and see if it's been correctly applied? Because that would be a very interesting question to answer. So and maybe possibly for the first time in his life, Mark Clattenburg has been right about something. So
Yeah.
we'll think about
Exactly.
that. But yeah, look, I mean, again, it's hard not to dwell on that because it's the big talking point from the game. It really is, and I think we talked about some relatively strong individual performances, and I think the relative lack of depth in the squad as well. Those are really the kind of headlines from this match. There wasn't anything else that particularly stuck out. I mean, Mateta's performance was really good, and you mentioned earlier that clearly there's not enough confidence in Edouard to give Mateta a
Yeah.
rest
A
after
rest.
75, 80 minutes, which again, going into the rest of the season is probably a little bit of a concern. I really enjoyed today when he had that shot from about 30 yards on the kind of, it
Almost
was a
caught him
volley, it was a half
perfectly quick
volley.
turn. Yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think again it's one of those where he kind of probably caught it a bit too flush. If you kind of shin that, well, you might you can sometimes rocket them into the top corner, and but I think that was interesting today. But going back to some of the comments talking about Eze, there was a comment earlier on where somebody suggested, and apologies, I couldn't remember who it was, that Eze's heart didn't look in it today. So whilst I don't agree with that, because I thought it was a reasonable performance, he had, the most shots of any player today, 2 on
Right.
target, key passes, scored a free kick that was obviously disallowed. Little bit, wayward with some of his passing, to be fair. But Patrick, you mentioned it. There was a couple of times where he made a decision that maybe you wouldn't think he would make. So there's one where Mitchell was in on the left and he went for a
Yeah.
shot instead,
Yeah. The long shot. Yeah. Yeah.
which again was a strange one because yeah, you don't usually get that. If anything, he usually runs a little too close to the defenders before releasing the ball, or if he's going to make an error there. But I think he, yeah. I don't. Do you read anything into that yourself? Because obviously you know all the rumours that are going around. Clearly, there's interest from both teams in North London. Arsenal seemingly less kind of feeling it's less of an urgent situation. They still like him, but do they want to pay the 68 million or whatever it is that we want for him? No, they don't. And And he's got 2 years on his contract, and that feels like where that situation would probably end with them. But Spurs is seemingly like they're pushing a little bit harder with the injury to Maddison and all that kind of stuff. And the managers had to acknowledge that there's all that talk, and all he's really said on it is not. He said, "Don't believe everything you read in the papers," which is a nice thing to hear.
Love
But at the
that quote. Love it. Yeah.
same time, he also acknowledged, obviously mentally he was right to play. So, but do you read anything into that performance today? Because people are asking the question. Pulled off after 83 minutes, but did really, really well, in my opinion.
I thought it was fine. If you look around the football world, and I'll throw out a couple of names, Isak, and with what they've done to get moves away. For all this going around ebbs, especially yesterday, I think yesterday got to the crescendo, and I hate social media more than I hate the transfer window. And so many people had Eze gone, basically 55 plus 5. It's agreed. He's not going to play tomorrow. He's not traveling with the team. He said goodbye to the players, etc., etc. And for him to, obviously, he must know. If he doesn't know directly, I'm sure someone's telling him of the noise. And for him to even perform at any level today, I got to commend him. I really have to. I don't care. The free kick aside, which could have been a winning goal, but I thought he worked really hard for the team. Again, he didn't have the blow possession of the ball. We had maybe 30% possession. He had 6 shots on goal. You mentioned that before. I thought he worked really hard. Yeah, he had a couple of misplaced passes. That's Ebbs. He does that every game. He's trying to pull out something that other players can't pull out. But for him to perform in that way with what's going on around him, and if there was, and again, getting into the nonsense again. Apparently, he went to the fans at the end. They sang his, the Ebbs song, the choir, and I think Munoz was there, and he bent down. He said a little prayer. People saying it's like he's saying goodbye, possibly. For him to perform at any level today with what was going on, I got to give him a lot of credit, because a lot of players said, you know what, my head's not into it. Let me sit this out. There's a lot going on. It's a big decision I've got to make. But for him to perform at any level today, I thought he was brilliant today. So I've got nothing, and I'll never, ever have nothing but love and respect for Eze, especially, again, this to me is kind of a nice way to end it, because of the fact that so much going on. He could have just said, you know what, I can't play today. I'm just not into it. No, for me, he did a great job today. So credit to him. And Gahey too at some point, because him thing, especially the whole way. Like the man just said on Friday, they trained all week. No one's come to him asking for a move. We get it. Arsenal, Spurs around you, Champions League. I get it. More money, stay in London, just got married. There's a lot why he should leave. A lot why I'd love him to stay, but a lot more for him to leave. So I get it. But for him to go out and perform today at any level, credit to him. And again, credit to Gahey also.
Definitely. And yeah, I was gonna say that Gahey is just you wouldn't know a thing, would you? And I think that says a lot about the squad and the players and the things that Glasner's been saying about that togetherness. It's whether he wants to go, whether he's desperate to leave, whether he is going to leave, he clearly has too much respect for the manager, for his teammates, and for the club in general to do anything other than pull on his shirt and give his best. And look, human beings are impacted by stuff. Like you can give your absolute best and put it out of your mind, but there's still, on some level, there might be something subconsciously that impacts your decision making in the game, blah blah blah. But it just seemed consistent to me. But the things you're talking about, again, I've said, oh, he's off about so many players over the years when they've thrown their shirt into the crowd and like touch the badge and all this kind of stuff, and then they turn up again next week and everything's the same. But and it could, that for it's true of any player, isn't it? If any player in our squad, if someone tomorrow sends a bid in of a certain amount of money, and they're a club of a certain stature, then any one of our players can go. So we should never be like, Eze's gone. It probably is going to go, because he's 27 to 28 nearly, I think, and 2 years on his contract, won't sign another one. It's absolute peak time for his career. But there's no sense in going anywhere where he's going to be on the bench, is there? There's a World Cup coming up. He's right there in the England reckoning. He's got to be playing every week, right? That's a fact for him. It's the same for Mark Gahey as well. Wherever he goes, he's got to be in that team. Otherwise, World Cups are every 4 years. It's a long time to wait for another. So that's a factor for both of those players as well. So, we've, as it says there from Spiritual, Zaha was supposed to go every summer. And, and there were times where he really wanted to,
Yeah, really wanted to go. Yeah, really wanted to go.
And again, people see that as a disrespect to the club, but it never is. It's It's players wanting to look back at their career and say, well, I did the best that I could, and I challenged myself, and I experienced things that I wanted to experience. Zaha, people now still talk about should he have stayed again. He got to play and score in the Champions League. So as a top footballer, which he absolutely was,
Yeah.
he got to put that on his career and say, I did that. I played Champions League football. I scored in Europe. And
he made the move to United. It's just that Fergie, who wanted him, retired. Had Fergie not retired, Wolves' football career would have been so much different. I mean, I don't have any qualm saying that. But when he left, his whole career was put down the drain because of the Moyes didn't rate him for whatever reason. Yeah. So, but he did make the move early in his career, and then thank God he came back to Palace because he was kept us up. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Football career is very finite. You got to take the opportunities. I hate when they leave because I support Palace and I want Palace to do well, but I understand it when they leave because again, it's not a 30-year career. It's maybe 10 years if you're really good. So you got to make the most money, most opportunity you can. You don't look back and say I could have done that. So yeah, I understand what you're saying.
But to give it context as well, I want Palace to be one of the clubs that comes and gets 100%, these players.
Yes,
and people really don't want to leave us because why would they? Because they're already at they're playing international football. They're playing in Europe every week. They're challenging for stuff, and we're the closest we've ever been to that right now. Let's be honest. We got 2 domestic trophies right now. Crazy. We hold, right? So let's not ignore the fact that the trajectory we're on gets us into that place where we don't have to have this conversation about, well, you expect like Wharton, right? Well, we'll be lucky to hold on to him for the rest of the year, and then he'll probably be off next summer, right? That's what we would usually be talking about. But what we want to be saying is, well, next season he'll be playing Champions League with Palace. That's what we want.
Right.
Not saying it will happen. I mean, you can quote me as much as you like, but that's got to be the aim. So again, it's a horrible situation to be in. We're in a transfer window where we haven't done any real business. Let's face it. If you look at the starting lineup today, we bought 2 backup players. We won an FA Cup. We won our first ever major trophy.
Right.
And
for 2 loanees, right? Players were on loan last year. For 2 loanees were on loan last year, right?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
I want to address the question. Guys, don't put too many questions. I thought we can't do a long stream today, but David, I actually ask Hambo to answer that question. Has Paris taken the club as far as he can financially? Financially, but
I think that because the word financially is in there, finickily. Anyway, finickily. But no, all jokes aside, David, it's hard to type quick, isn't it? But I think that word does sort of change
the question,
the meaning, doesn't it?
The meaning, yeah, it does.
Because he's not doing it on his own financially. Okay, there's a board. There's 3 other major owners. There's other investors. I don't think it's about finance. I don't think it's whether Steve Parish has taken the club as far as he can financially. It's about whether or not he has taken the club as far as he can with the current structure that we have, right?
Exactly.
So the money is always there if you have the right people around you and the right willingness to invest, and also the correct infrastructure around the club. And that is where we've stalled, right? We've not developed our stadium still. And I know it's hard. I'm not trying to stick the boot in. I'm not saying just build a stadium, because it doesn't work that way, right? It's so many hoops to jump through, right? But we haven't really developed the infrastructure to the level that we needed to do. And Steve Parish is somebody who's been saying for years that that's the only way to sustain success, is to bring the club up to that level. We've done lots of little things that have amounted to a much more kind of professional setup around the club. I've been there in the exec boxes and behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff, as I'm sure many people have, and it looks really good now. I can remember pottering around the back of Selhurst and accidentally walking into places because there was no signage, and you just end up walking into the boardroom. You're like, oh, right, okay, sorry. And that kind of stuff. I remember those days, and go through the players' lounge, take a wrong turning, and you're in the dressing rooms by mistake. I didn't do that, but I've heard rumours. But anyway, so it's a much more professional setup at Palace now, and it has developed. The club is a different club. It's really a Premier League club now in many ways, but the kind of income streams that you need to sustain, the level of attention that you need to sustain. It's really, really hard. And the bottom line is this, right? We have our way of operating. Our way of operating is get the maximum value you can out of the transfer window by not being pushed to doing stuff too early, too quickly, or saying how much money you've got to spend. So we're very guarded. It's worked for us in the past. Is that right for us where we are now? Doesn't seem like our manager thinks so. That's all I'm going to say, right? He seems to feel like it's actually much more important to have the players early and develop them and work them in the squad, because that will help you on pitch, which will then generate the money that you have spent to. It's like being risk averse but creating a problem for yourself is basically what they're doing, and that's where I feel we are. So I know it's a long way round and a bit wordy in terms of my answer to David, but I think that's a question that perhaps the board and Steve need to ask themselves, which is our way of working that has served us so well over the years and brought us to a place none of us ever thought we would get to in our lifetime. Is that way of working going to take us to that next level? And I don't think it is, because I think the net result of how we're currently operating is we will lose our manager and we will lose our best players. And we're going to be hoping that what we bring in to replace the manager and replace those players continues that upward trajectory. And it doesn't always work like that. And you've seen it countless times. Teams of our level getting onto the cusp of something better, and then they can't quite do it. And it doesn't help that you feel like the rest of football's against you sometimes, does it? And that's certainly how it's felt this year. And someone's effectively taken 20 million quid out of our pocket by kicking us out of a competition we rightfully qualified for. And that doesn't help either. So I have every sympathy, and football feels rotten at times. And, maybe these rumours about Josh Harris buying out Woody Johnson and taking the club over, and obviously Steve would probably go if that happened, I guess, because he'd no longer have much of somebody would have a majority say, and there'd be also maybe he's had enough. Maybe the UEFA thing was enough for him to say, you know what, I'm sick of this. The establishment in the game is there. It's set up to stop clubs like us pushing in, stop clubs like us getting to that level. And I think someone in the chat, Red F, I think it was, who accused me of needing sunscreen. He also said, which is something I much more agree with, he also said it feels a little bit like when I thought wrestling was real. And it does. I see that. I see that for sure.
Yeah. It was a great question, David. And I'm glad Hamill touched on the Josh Harris, Woody Johnson thing, because that's going to be the next thing that plays out. That's really important for us, because I think, knowing a little bit about Josh Harris, he owns over here the Devils hockey team, the Sixers basketball team, and the Washington Commanders football team. And the Commanders are doing very well. They've bounced back quickly. They were a bad franchise for a while. They've done really well. He's got a lot of money. He doesn't get overly involved in the team. He'd like someone in charge that can do that job. He's not the kind of owner that gets involved. He's a decent owner. I mean, the Devils are doing a little better. And again, Sixers have had their ups and downs, star players, etc. But again, the Commanders are a very good franchise right now. They're one of the top franchises in the NFL. So for him to buy a majority share, it changes a lot of things. Again, Hamble's right. Does Parrish stick around? Does Parrish take on a employee role? Does Harris want to bring in someone who's less risk averse and want to take more chances and push us on? It'll be interesting. So it was a great question. I mean, we'll see. There's a lot of comments in the chat about Parrish, etc. I'm not going to get into it really today, but it will be interesting to, about the new stand, all that kind of stuff. We've got a lot of issues in the background. But again, the important thing right now is doing what we can do for Glasgow in this window, and obviously coming to some kind of decision on Eze, most likely sell. And then if we do bring in El Canus or Christos Zolis, whoever it is, and a defender, get it done quickly, because clearly after today's result, we know what the manager can do. He's shown it. Again, I'm happy because we won the FA Cup and won the Community Shield. Anything after this is a major bonus. I get people's frustrations. I don't want to jump on that bandwagon with Parrish and or the I can't bother with that conversation, but I do understand it. We could be better, but again, football to me is broken anyway. The VAR rules, the financial fair play rules, FFP, it's the big clubs stay big, the small clubs stay small. I hate it. You mentioned us losing our best player because we have to. and hopefully one day it won't happen. But it is what it is. But great question, David. I really appreciate you pushing on our conversation for today. So thanks for that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and to kind of round off one of the things that you're talking about there, I think when you're in that position where you're not getting things that you earn on the pitch, that's really problematic. And I was on a Chelsea podcast yesterday previewing this game, and we were chatting, and it amazed me because they asked me a few questions about the situation with the Europa League, and I said to them, I sort of, and they're kind of like almost joking, well, just go win that, and then you'll be in it next year. And I'm just like, yeah, I know what you're saying. And they're like, well, maybe should have read the emails. And it's just like, and I was like, right, I'm going to give you all the information, and they were genuinely stunned. And they're like, well, how can that happen? And I'm just like, yeah, how can it happen? How can it happen? That is really interesting. How can it happen? And then you start, but I think it's bigger than that, right? It's bigger than how can, a club with an influential chairman, shall we say, get you kicked out of a competition you qualify for. That's how can that happen? But also the deeper thing is the workarounds, right? And it doesn't just go to think about every major change that's happened in football in recent years, right? So think about VAR, but think in particular about financial fair play. Let's really break it down. What was financial fair play brought in to do?
Allegedly level the playing field, apparently, for the smaller club. Yes. Allegedly, right.
Level the playing field. Stop clubs with giant commercial incomes,
money. Exactly,
and personal wealth from buying success at the cost of clubs that don't have that. So protect sporting integrity of a competition, right? Yes. Make it so the sport of football is a sport and not who has the deepest pockets and the loudest mouth, right? That was the idea. So, but instead of doing that, it's created, and I believe completely by mistake, it's created a scenario where academy players are being traded for vast sums of money, like in two directions. Like was it Newcastle and Villa were trading players, like a goalkeeper who played like 2 games was 26 million quid. Like, who was Jacob Ramsey recently? I don't know if he's gone, but he's rumoured to be going for like 43 million quid.
Right, Villa Academy, right? What they call it, pure profit, exactly.
Pure profit, right? Yeah. So you've created a scenario where you're trying to make things fair by but then that overinflates the entire transfer market, not just and you've got a commodity in the Premier League of a homegrown player that becomes, look at, we played Chelsea today. Conor Gallagher going to Atletico Madrid, right? They wanted to keep him, like he wanted to stay, but. But from a board level, no, pure profit, off he goes, because then we can keep throwing hundreds of millions around on all these other players. And you're just like, that breaks the game. That's they're trying to introduce a rule to make the game better, and they've broken it. They've broken the game. Just be simple with it.
Yes.
Just be simple with it. Cap spending, cap wages, cap whatever, but just do it in a way that you're not disadvantaging people from their right to earn, and you're not disadvantaging people with talent, but stop allowing people to circumnavigate rules. And if you're UEFA, stop publishing the circumnavigation of your rules. Don't talk about blind trusts when, the person who's put their shares in the blind trust at Nottingham Forest is running around, waddling around on the pitch at high speed, screaming at officials and the manager, and in every possible way, proving that a blind trust is worth absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
it's a complete and utter fallacy. So why do that? So the game is breaking, and people are continuing to break it. And then this is another example, a rule that was chucked in 2019, 2020. As I said earlier, the aim is stop players disrupting a defensive wall. Was the aim in 2019 to have a pretty decent free kick goal disallowed seemingly randomly until everyone was reminded of the rule? Absolutely not. So just police the situation. You don't need to introduce a new rule that says be outside of 1 meter of a wall. You just say, if you disrupt the wall, in the opinion of a referee, it's a foul. That's all you need to say. You don't need a new rule. We don't need Rule 13 to be randomly applied by Darren England. We don't need it. So, you got to ask big questions about what's going on. And so I understand where you're coming from, Patrick. Sorry for my tirade, but when you say you've enjoyed the fact that Palace have won 2 trophies, you're taking football for what it is now. That I'm with you. It's things do have to change, and I'm hoping that this season we get to come, when you put it up there, like, that's what it's about. It's about football. It's about the players coming off the pitch, working incredibly hard for a point, and we should be really happy about that. And we shouldn't be looking at this one moment that changed the game, that just stopped it feeling like a sport, if you like.
Yeah, I only popped it up because we're gonna wrap up soon, but I wanted to pop up this quote from Chris Richards. He was interviewed post match, and he says, "One thing we talked about before the game was embracing the toughness of Chelsea are going to bring. It wasn't going to be perfect, but as long as we could keep a clean sheet, that's number one for us." On the issue of Eze's disallowed free kick, the American reflected that he hadn't seen an issue with the goal in live play. "We're pretty disappointed," he added. "I think everybody in the stadium thought it was a goal, and somehow VAR saw something else. You live and die by VAR these days." But regardless, it was a good free kick, and hopefully we get a few more of those. I mean, and what else can you? Sums it up.
That's it, and that's where football was, isn't it? That's what football was. It was
On the pitch.
you're feeling on the day, on the pitch,
Yeah.
and you knew referees and linesmen would get it wrong, right? We've seen some absolutely ridiculous calls,
Yeah.
but it feels now like, I was a big supporter of bringing in technology. I
I was
really
too.
was.
I
Like,
was too.
goal line technology has actually worked really well, to be honest. But I just felt like when they stated what VAR is and isn't for, that's the key part, really. Because, like, let's face it didn't ruin cricket, did it? Like,
No.
when they
Rugby,
brought in,
no.
it
Tennis,
doesn't
no.
no,
Exactly.
all of those other sports, like, there's a margin of error that everybody needs to
Yes.
understand. And I think football is the only one where they've gone far too into the minutiae, like measuring shirt sleeves and, you know, I don't know, wind speed and trajectory. I don't know. I have no idea anymore. They're going to start having predictive algorithms for where people would have run. I don't know. It's
Right.
got ridiculous. They need to stop and go back and go, like, was anything dramatically wrong with that? No. Okay. So, like, for example, today Darren England look at the situation where Mark Gay is making a nuisance of himself. Eze strikes the ball goes in the net. The keeper could have saved it, didn't. Everybody celebrates. Chelsea are disappointed. We're elated. Did he look at that moment and
Right.
the position of the defenders, those interactions, and think there was a foul? Did either of the assistants looking at that think there was a foul? Did the fourth official at a push think something's up there? No. Did VAR do is a goal happened, so therefore VAR check a set criteria of things. And then to pull it up on something like that, it feels like you've gone beyond what it was supposed to do. And even if by the letter of the law they can do that, which I assume they can, it's too much. It's too far. You're sanitizing the game, and you're stopping human beings being human beings. So there's an interesting discussion about penguins going on the chat, which I found slightly distracting during that. Penguins can see their knob. I don't know. Anyway.
Outrageous comment that by Red F.
Yeah, anything that went through. Anyway, stop thinking about that. And yeah, should we bring this to a close? I know we usually have callers and stuff like that, but both you and I have got things we have to do.
Yeah, unfortunately,
and I've ranted for far too long. So apologies. That's really my fault, but a little bit worked up after that one. But look, honestly, positives. It's all about the positives. Played really well today. Chelsea will be troubling the top end of the division throughout the course of this season. They're going to be a force in Europe and domestically, and we did not look like a lesser team than them, did we? And we should be very proud of that. We'll continue forward, and excellent. It's first game of the season, didn't lose, away at Stamford Bridge, point on the board. And then was it Thursday we go into our first European game, don't we? Against Frederick's dad, apparently.
Amazingly, I mean, to think that you've got those 2 trophies in our cabinet, and now we've got a European game at Selhurst, first time ever, technically, because The game against Samsunspor don't really count because they weren't
No.
really European games. But it's gonna be amazing. I mean, what a week coming up! We'll have a lot of content coming up for that. But yeah, Fredrikstad Thursday under lights Sellers. I wish I could be there. Hopefully, when we get past Fredrikstad, I will be over at least once or twice for a European game at home or away. But amazing. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a big week ahead for Palace for sure.
Absolutely right. So all that remains to be said is thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the rants. But to be fair, there wasn't that much in terms of goalmouth action, was there? There was, so
No,
we
not
couldn't
really.
analyse too much. But really good performance. Really, really happy to see Palace with a point on the board. And we go forward and we get stronger, and hopefully some action over the next couple of weeks, bringing some players in and strengthening and not losing too much. So you can count Samsunspor. I'm not sure Samsunspor count anyway.
Exactly.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and yeah, keep in touch with everything. If you don't already, subscribe immediately. There's things flashing under my face that are telling you to do it. The bells ringing and everything. I don't know who's had a go at the graphics, but well done, everyone. But yeah, anyway, spread the word as well. I was listening to something the other day, and they pointed out that all the marketing you do and all that kind of stuff, none of it makes a difference. It's all about you people telling other people that we exist.
There we
all
go.
right? Doesn't really make a difference who we sign up with advertising. Forget it. It's pointless. It's all about you. So tell people we're here. Enjoy what we do. Spread the word and contribute as well. Get in the comments when we later shows. You'll get a chance to come on yourself, and you can tell us all about the things we've been saying that are wrong, and join us in person. But until next time, up the Palace.
Up the Palace.